Hi guys, if you couldn't tell, currently we have the reveal for Boss Arunka, who's the newest ML character being revealed to epicseven. And to kind of give you a bit of a spoiler, this character looks a bit crazy for knights in general, but without further ado, let's actually take a minute to see exactly what her animation looks like. So, as you can see, she's got the, if I'm not mistaken, the Akira slide, which is popularized through some manner. I'm not exactly familiar with what it is, but that's a cool reference, or it's cool that this is, I guess, drawn in that specific way or animated or referenced in this specific way. And without further ado, in terms of her kit and in terms of what she has to offer, she is a light knight, and of course, as you see here, her imprint or team-wide imprint is attack percent. Now this is an interesting choice in regards to my personal opinion, just because like Arunka formerly is a grass warrior, but as you're seeing here, she's quite slow. She's got 93 base speed. She does have pretty high defense and health, all things considered, with about as much attack as you'd imagine from a less damage dealing oriented or a less damage dealing focused DP or knight character. But in addition to this, you'll notice that she does have a little bit of ER, which I think will be kind of important as we get into a bit of a breakdown in terms of what she has to offer. Now, if you are curious, her self-imprint is also defense percent, which might lead you to believe that maybe she's going to deal damage with defense percent, but that isn't so much the case, as you'll see in a moment, as the first skill that we have to talk about, which I think is actually one of the most game-changing skills that we've seen thus far, is Vanguard of the Silent Expanse. What this reads is that at the start of battle and at the end of turn, when the caster is in the front row, which she'll always be, very easy, she's granted a ferocious stand for 1 turn. Now what this does is that first, after being attacked, or well, prior to ferocious stand, well, just in general, after being attacked, she increases the combat readiness of herself by 20%, this increasing up to 25%, meaning roughly every 4 hits or so, she is guaranteed or given an extra turn. Now, of course, there's a bit of manipulation to this and things to consider, but what's even more impactful or crazy about the skill is Ferocious Stand, which is not only undispellable, but also it reads that allies except for the bearer cannot be selected as a target for attacks. Now, to be clear, this is target selection, and this doesn't prevent, say, a character from being hit by a Bellion S1 or an AoE, or something like an AoE attack in general, like someone like Ludwig's S3, for instance, may be targeted onto a specific, or like onto a team in general. So as far as I could tell, this shouldn't be the case. It's not as though, unless if it's even more ridiculous than I'm interpreting, that the characters are invincible. That shouldn't be the way it is, and as you'll see in a moment, it does lead more towards you just not being able to target characters with single targeted abilities. But just in isolation, this is a pretty game-changing kind of element or new concept for an ability that's been introduced, as now of course this means that as soon as the character is on field, you can't you can't unbuffable the character, you can't seal this off of the ML Arunka, or the Boss Arunka rather. This is just a guaranteed, you have to hit me no matter what kind of concept, which is, in my understanding, or my understanding of the game right now, pretty powerful. Now, to be clear, there are, of course, this is just my day one impressions, and there are different ways that we could interpret this, but to be fair, normally I feel like outside of maybe taking something like a cleave setup into something like this, or a multi AoE setup like into a character like Arunka, characters that want to be AoE, or if you are going to take someone like Bellion or AoE characters in general into a team, you're met very quickly with characters like Rwana if you're countered, LRK if there's too much AoE, and for the most part that kind of deals with too much AoE in the game as it is. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that there aren't answers to this ability, but my point of this, or my point in saying all this, is that this is a very powerful spell, as there are very clear synergies with a character that is basically forced to get targeted over and over. You may in some cases be able to, say, continuously revive or buff a character like Arunka with someone like Ruel's S2 so that you don't end up dying on the character and you have a bunch of I guess, what is it, targeted aggression, while also having damage limitations on it. But beyond this, we're also seeing that with her S3, she dispels all debuffs, or she dispels all debuffs for a singular enemy. This is not AoE, while also decreasing defense for 2 turns. And of course, this is a 100%, a 100%, not a 75 or 85, whatever it is. Now, in addition to this, when using your S3, you're granted defense and a barrier to the caster for 2 turns. And I will admit, though, it does say that damage dealt and barrier strength increase proportional to the caster's defense. Likely because the build on the character looks more Aureus oriented, the damage on this ability doesn't look nearly as insane as it could be. Now, this isn't to say that you couldn't potentially use this in the future, but if you just take a moment to see this, this is a 22,000 boss Arunka, which you could argue maybe is a bit tankier or faster, or one of these two things. But as you're seeing here in a moment, this ends up doing something like 2,000 damage to an Ilanov. Now, of course, this is an Ilanov, but 2,000 damage on a knight in a meta where pretty much everyone has some sort of penetration or has some scaling HP or percentage damage doesn't seem too crazy or amazing. But the defense break that we've been introduced to, and the decreased defense on the enemy, while also giving herself defense and a barrier in order to sustain all the hits that she's going to be tanking, is honestly pretty interesting. Now, moving along from this, what you'll also notice is that with her S1, this is another defense break on her S1, with it being a 75% chance. However, if you soul burn this ability, you have a guarantee to trigger a dual attack from the ally with the highest attack. Now, of course, the fact that it's not 100% feels a little bit bad, but that's okay, because truth be told, an S1 like this is pretty powerful. Now, from what I understand, probably one of the first things that I'd maybe test or experiment with specifically Arunka is likely going to be a counter setup where you just continuously defense break everyone on the team. But of course, depending on whether or not the enemy takes things like immunities, or depending on if people end up using Meteor Cowric, very popular or common characters like this, there's a chance that this defense break on S1 means nothing, and therefore maybe running something on counter is worse than perhaps just using something like protection set. Now, despite all this, there are some thoughts that I have about the character, and especially as I let the showcase kind of play through, that I have about the state of the character in general. Now, first and foremost, I think she looks amazing. Her kit, her design, all of this top tier. Smilegate cooked again as usual when it comes to designs for a character. But as you're about to see with the combat demo, this is a little bit crazy. Now, again, if you're seeing the composition that's being introduced here, it doesn't look that unrealistic from the enemy team side, though of course we are running something a bit more unorthodox in terms of arena offense to kind of counter it. Now, we've got Diane, who isn't uncommon necessarily, but we've got something like a Shuri for some reason, which is okay, I guess, and we've also got Seaside Bologna. Now, again, if you're looking at this is a crazy amount of targeting already from the beginning. We've used an S3, or we've absorbed an S3 from Flan, and it basically did no damage whatsoever. Of course, if there was a bit more tuning, or if you were a little bit tankier, a lot of these things would of course make the Arunka look even crazier or damage oriented. But she is, for all intents and purposes, not really moving at all in terms of taking damage. Now, this is the part where I think the showcase looks a bit more interesting, as they do end up having the Shuri who has applied bombs, but now you're able to see an Arunka that uses her soul burn and drags a high attack character to kind of do her bidding. Now, unfortunately, she did end up, or rather the Ilanov did end up resisting, but as you can see, this is a pretty insane amount of damage being pushed up against the enemy team. Now, again, while this is going on, my initial thoughts towards this character is that in terms of being a DP or a mitigation knight, I think she looks powerful. I think forcing the entire enemy team to, without fail, have to either completely AoE or target and one-shot the Arunka immediately feels a bit obnoxious. If you are maybe perhaps someone that is running someone like the MO Hua Young, Maybe this is the sort of character that you could argue is able to one-shot and deal enough damage to deal with a character like this. But as you're seeing, this was essentially a team that got instantly countered and does do very well, especially into arena right now. As I mean, you're seeing right now, characters like Flan just kind of forcibly use all their skills onto the Arunka, and then nothing else happens after the fact. Now, of course, there are other things on screen like the DN. You've also got the SSB for, you know, additional firepower, which may make things look a bit weird or unorthodox. But from what I can tell right now, though her damage doesn't look that good, I think her versatility as a mitigation knight is kind of I don't want to say top tier, but very promising. And until we actually see how she'll perform, I figure that for most cases, this will likely be a character that people end up replacing someone like maybe Arrowell with. It is unfortunate she doesn't have any hard CC in terms of, you know, having a provoke. Though, I mean, technically speaking, just by existing, she has a provoke. But again, if you are someone that can run AoEs, I don't think that Arunka specifically will prevent, let's say, a cleave-oriented or a faster team from eliminating her. Though it does mean that if you are encountering a lot of single-target characters, perhaps like the Flan or perhaps like the Janua, that this doesn't end up working nearly as well. But this showcase is a little bit biased, again, as you're seeing her have a barrier, she has a defense buff, and more importantly, she does have DN's buff, which in this case is an anti-crit and defense pen, which again kind of skews things in kind of a negative light. In any case, I do think that she looks cool. I'm going to be pulling and testing her. I think she's probably going to be fantastic for people to end up running arena, and that is something that I do myself. And yeah, these have been my first day impressions. Of course, as we see more about her, I'll probably have a bit of a better idea of how she pans out or plays, but expect to see her probably in Guild War and Arena, likely as a very annoying character. But I am curious about how well or how easy it is for her to maybe be run on something like Holy Sack or run on something really annoying, so that someone like Hua Young doesn't one-shot her. Who knows? Obviously, Holy Sack not the best option against Hua Young, but there's a lot of things that you can do with this character. She looks very interesting. I like how versatile she is. And yeah, that's going to be it for today's video. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.